Hello, I'm James Keith Walton. This conversation is about American strengths. Now, what are the strengths of Americans? Well, when we look at the world, we can say definitively that Americans are some of the most generous people on the planet. We provide more aid and money to developing nations than any other country on the planet. We do have some strings attached, but we don't take advantage of countries. We don't foreclose like some other countries in the world do to the people they loan money to develop projects. We usually work through like the World Bank, and many times countries have been defaulting on loans or unable to make the loans and payments that the World Bank has loaned them, which was mostly American money. And the World Bank works with them and doesn't foreclose on them, doesn't shut them down, and that's a good thing. American people are generous. A lot of us, we give to the food banks, we work on habitat houses, we go out of our way to volunteer, and that's a spirit that's unique here. When I've gone to other countries, I've asked about, when I was in South Korea, for example, I was asking about food banks. I was talking to some people at the hotel, and they were from South Korea, and we were talking about poverty and the poor. And they said, well, what do poor people in the United States do? I mean, how do they get their food? What's going on? And I said, well, in the United States, we're fortunate that people give money to food banks. And a lot of times, if you have no money and you have no food, you can go to the food bank and say, listen, I don't have any food, and the food bank will give you food. And these people from South Korea were just amazed at that. He said, food bank? I said, yeah, yes, it's part of our heritage and part of our duty as people that care about people to help feed other people. Whereas as an individual, I feel I should feed the hungry, house the homeless, and give hope to those who have no hope. And it's kind of been one of my credos that I've lived by in my lifetime, and I do. I make an effort to feed the hungry, and I make an effort to house the homeless, and I make an effort to give hope to those who have no hope. And in my small way, I think I've done some things that have helped improve the situation. So what's something else that the United States is really good at? Well, we're good at growing food. That's just an enormous thing. A lot of countries don't have water and land available to grow food the way we can. And the American farmer is just prodigious. I mean, we just really can grow the heck out of food. This is one of our strengths. So, and when I'm looking at the United States, I think, okay, maximize your strengths, minimize your weaknesses. That's a variation of the von Neumann's theory of games and economics, the Maximin theory, they called it, except I've applied it this other way. But it's kind of plagiarism. Forgive me for that. But there you were supposed to maximize your gains and minimize your losses in von Neumann's strategy. Here, I'm saying, maximize our strengths and minimize our weaknesses as a society. This is our American ingenuity. I remember talking to a friend of mine, a mathematician friend from Romania, and he said, you Americans are really good at figuring out how to do things and organizing it. You are the best in the world at this, and we are. I've worked for a number of companies, and I found that, when it comes to organizing things, there's nobody like the Americans to get the thing organized as efficiently as possible. We're really good at it, and we should be proud of it. And we're very ingenious. We are able to come up with ideas and dream of things that other people would never have thought of. And that's due to our education, due to our desire to build a better mousetrap, due to the desire and the ability for us to turn good ideas into profit and to make money off it. Now, I didn't say get filthy rich, but I'm saying, a lot of people have been motivated to come up with a better idea because they wanted to make a better product and make some more money developing that better product. Nothing wrong with that. What's another one of our virtues and our strengths? Well, near as I can tell, Americans don't give up. If we have a problem or an issue, we'll work that problem and we'll work that issue until we solve it. We don't give up. Excuse me. We don't give up because and I have a motto about that. I don't fail because I don't give up. You only fail if you give up. So, and this is very much the American spirit that I've seen in everybody in the United States. So we're generous people. We like to help our fellow neighbors and our fellow Americans. We're ingenious. We're industrious. We're probably some of the hardest. We have the highest production rates in the world. The American worker is a phenomenally productive individual. Contrary to what you hear a lot of times, we are very productive. And that's given us a society that in many ways is the envy of the world. And they could say, well, that's a big statement, James, that our society is the envy of the world. Look at the things right now. Well, right now, if you look at the total society, you'll find that most people are not terrible racists. They don't hate other people. Matter of fact, most Americans want everybody to succeed, and we don't understand why it doesn't happen. So this ability for us so we're generous, hardworking, and industrious, and ingenious. We think of ways to do everything in better ways, and we never give up. Those are really some outstanding virtues. We're compassionate. That's part of the being generous. We're compassionate towards those who have less and those who have need. There's 7.8 billion people on the planet, and we're really an exceptional country when it comes to the opportunity that we have in the United States to live good lives and well-fed lives and safe lives. We have issues, absolutely. We have weaknesses, absolutely. We can always improve things, absolutely. And that'll never change. We as a society were formed when the founding fathers, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they talked about a more perfect society. They were trying to form a more perfect society. And so we're on a trail to create a more perfect society from a historical perspective. And this more perfect society would be one in which people have decent housing. People have the opportunity to own a home. One thing the socialists will tell you that, we should all share, we should be socialist. Well, one thing they're not saying and telling you is that under pure socialism, all property is held for the common good. What does that mean? Well, that means you don't own a home. I saw this as a perfect example when I was in China. In China, there is no private property, so everyone rents an apartment, and it's got to be disheartening. There's no amount of work you can do on that apartment where it just won't fall down in another 45 years. You have to maintain a house for sure, but I've seen lots of houses that were 100 years old, and people still enjoyed that house. There was a long history in the world where nobody owned anything except the royalty. The aristocracy owned all the property. The church owned all the property. We got out of that. We were able to overcome that, and especially in the United States, we're able to buy and own property and build houses. we could work very hard as an individual, and if we worked hard through our life and had skills that allowed us to make a living, and we did those skills with enough efficiency and veracity as required, we could make a living and we could support our family, and our children would be able to get an education, and then the next generation of kids would the next generation would have an opportunity to build upon that. And it is a slow but sure progression of improving our lives. You could start out as a poor kid, and and you may have come over. I know my ancestors came over to the United States and came in through Canada. Some of them were Welsh coal miners, so I rather imagine their lives were pretty abysmal back in Wales as being coal miners. If you can imagine being a coal miner in the 16 and 1700s, it really was probably just a terrible job. No doubt. The part of my family that came from Ireland, there was the potato famine, and the massive amount of suffering that went along with that. Starvation. Part of my family came from Germany. Part of my family was, we were part of the place where they kicked us out for our religious beliefs for 75, 80 years, and then the new king came in and they let us back into Germany, and we were able to go back. And then the German side of us went to Canada and came down into the United States and homesteaded farms and got away from being kicked out of anywhere. When we came into the United States as pioneers and as settlers and homesteaders, we worked very hard to become part of the community. We helped build schools and churches. When our neighbors needed a barn raising, we would go and help with everybody else, along with everybody else, help build their barn. When there was crops to get in, we worked with our neighbors to help harvest the crops. It was a community effort because we were building a community. We were part of the community. And that's part of the heritage of the American pioneer and the American homesteaders. It's this idea that you're part of a community and you work together. You work together to overcome things and to solve problems. But most common factor between all my ancestors is that they were all really, really, really poor. They came over here with almost nothing, and they lived with almost nothing. But when they were able to get on a farm, they may not have had much, but they were at least able to be in control of whether or not they would have food. They were in control of whether or not they had a better tomorrow, and if it depended upon their effort. If they put a lot of effort, then they probably had a higher chance of success. Meant a better tomorrow, which meant a better tomorrow. I don't care how many tons of coal my family dug in Wales that went to heat the aristocracy. None of that, benefited my family. We were still coal miners living in huts and shacks. The part of the family that came from there. I'm a mixture of things, of ancestry. I call myself a mutt, and I'm glad I'm a mutt. I've met people where I grew up. I grew up in a place called Youngstown, Ohio, and Youngstown used to have a steel industry, and there'd be waves of immigrants that would come over to the United States from other countries, and they would settle in neighborhoods. And so they would come over in waves as the government allowed them and as the industry needed them. And so you had your Italian neighborhood, you had your German neighborhood, you had your Irish neighborhoods, you had your Polish neighborhoods, Romanian, Yugoslavian. It was so fun because I had all these friends that were from all these different parts of the world, and many times their grandparents would not speak English, and they were the first generation. Some of my friends that had gone to high school here, their parents were children when they came over, and all those people came over to the United States in the hopes of creating a better life, and they found it, and they were able to do so. And that's still the potential, and that's still what's available in the United States. We have to make it happen. We have to figure out how to get back on that path again. and I have. I've got a solution. Like I said, my solutions are narrow. They're set to a 0.5 sigma, or a solution for 39% of the problem. And in this case, I think that'll make quite the difference. So this idea that in the United States, we're good at things, and part of our history is starting over. Did my ancestors come over from Wales and decide that they're going to dig coal here in the United States? No. I think they had enough of that over the centuries, and so they became farmers. Did my ancestors from Germany come over and say, oh, well, we're going to, I don't know what my ancestors in Germany did, but I know they weren't farmers. They were probably peasants and serfs working on somebody's manor, and maybe bootmakers, who knows? But bottom line is, when they came to the United States, they became farmers because they could be self-employed and they could be responsible for their own future. It was the opportunity that they had in the United States that they did not have in Germany. My Irish relatives, left famine and came to the United States, and they became farmers and ranchers and settled out west and so that they would be in control of their future by having the land and working the land. So America has always been about creating a better future. For a little while now, we've been caught up in arguing with each other and tearing each other down. We haven't really improved each other very much. If you look at the education levels in the United States, we can see that we've diluted the value of a degreed education, and we've made education more about indoctrination, it seems like, than actual practice of reasoning, critical thinking. We need to deal with that. Education is a subject I've already made a small video on, and I've proposed a way to get the people where we have heaviest failure rates squared away, where we can get them back on track, get people back on track. And that's poor people who are lacking basic skill sets that will allow them to make a decent living, or any kind of living, because they don't know how to read, write, and do arithmetic. So when I say that the United States is a land of opportunity, and has been a land of opportunity, like I said, people can come to the United States and in the past, and they've had nothing, and over time they've been able to acquire quite a bit or more, and then their children are able to do the same, and incrementally they've moved up the ladder. And this has been the game plan for many people in the United States. The parents raised them in the hopes that they do better than they did. But believe it or not, I've run into situations in my lifetime where I've run into people who did not want their children to be more educated than them. They wanted their children to consider them the most successful person they knew, and they actually worked that way to do it. There's some individuals where education is, there's some areas where education is not valued at all. I'm thinking of a conversation I had with a physicist friend of mine at Portland State University, and we were talking about Native American tribes, and there's a Native American tribe in New York that they have their reservation, and on the reservation they have an incredible failure rate of the education is just abysmal. But the tribal leaders don't want their children to get educated because they're afraid if they become educated and they'll move away from the reservation, and then their tribe would cease to exist. I don't really know how to approach that argument, that I don't want my children educated because I'm afraid they'll move away from me. See, that makes no logical sense to me. I understand that it occurs, that I can't completely wrap my head around that. And I probably never will, because for me, something that's logical and will improve things is always the goal. But part of our society is people who don't want their children to be more successful. I'm not going to try to solve those people's problem. That's not. But if you're part of a group of people that want to have a better life and think that, well, if I work if I could work and have a better life through my effort, well, that's something. Well, that's what I want. That's what I propose. That's my game plan. That's what I advocate. You know, like I mentioned in my announcement video, that I want everybody to work their butts off. I want people to work a lot, and I want them, and they can be successful doing that. You say, well, why would I have a better insight than others? I've noticed over the years that there's this all or nothing kind of thinking that goes on quite a bit of the time. And that all or nothing thinking could be best described as the zero-sum game. If you read any books on economics and theory, and brinksmanship, game theory, you'll hear the zero-sum game. And the zero-sum game is pretty much what you see on the TV shows, the reality TV shows, where people are on an island someplace and there's only one winner. And it's winner take all. And that's pretty much sums up the zero-sum game. But the fact is, I've never believed in the zero-sum game as being applicable to anything in the real world. It's applicable in football. It's applicable in tennis. I mean, you have a winner or a loser. You know, in sports, you have a winner or a loser. In life, I tend to look at it as not a zero-sum game. Matter of fact, my goal in my life, when I've mentored people and when I've worked with people, it's always been to, well, I want you to be successful too. Why not? I want you to be a success. Why shouldn't I want you to be a success? Why should I not want anyone to succeed? I want everybody to succeed. We can live in a society where we can be more successful. We can all have a degree of success that allows us to be better, doing better tomorrow than we are today. That's not an unrealistic goal. That's not a dream. That's just a different way of looking at it. And that's what we need to do. We need to change our thinking from a zero-sum game. If you win, then I've lost. If I win, then you've lost. No, that's not healthy. What is healthy is, oh, let me help you to be successful. You help me to be successful. In the end, we're all a little more successful, a little more fulfilled as individuals, and that'll probably resonate in a more peaceful society and a better society in so many ways. And so that's one of the strengths of America is that the people in the United States, I believe that the future is something that we can help shape and that we can make a better future. That's not always so in other countries. I recall talking to a Ukrainian friend of mine, and we were having dinner, and his wife said, you know, James, you're so optimistic. I don't know where you get your optimism from. Where do you get this? And I thought, well, gosh, that's part of being an American. You know, Americans are optimistic. We can always make tomorrow a better day. If when I wake up today, it's a new day. It's not yesterday, it's a new day. So if I want to make a change for myself and about myself, if I want to change myself, I can get up today and I can make a small change. I can do something about it. And that's the American. That's America. We don't have this mindset that, oh, well, you've been held down for forever. For the majority of Americans, it's not that way. Right now, we have a lot of racial strife. And there's a lot of protesting going on, and fortunately, more and more, the protest is actually being peaceful. There was a period of time when the protests were quite violent, and people were looting and stealing. And it seemed more of some of it, there was the peaceful part, and then at night, the criminals would come in. Well, the fact of the matter is, if you're listening to this, the majority of Americans are not hate-filled individuals. They don't hate anybody. Are there some people that hate people? Yeah, absolutely. Are there, who are these people? Well, you can tell them by their anger. You know, if they want to kill and they want to maim, if they want to burn and they want to destroy, well, what they should be doing is taking that anger and trying to get into something productive. You know, building something rather than tearing stuff down. It's easy to destroy stuff. All you got to do is light a match. It's much harder to build a water purification plant. It takes effort. It takes manpower. It takes woman power. It takes people working together on construction projects. If we want to move forward as a society, we've got to remember what our strengths are, that we believe in tomorrow. And then think about that every day. Tomorrow will be a better day than today. And when I wake up in the morning, I will make today a better day than yesterday. And we can do that.